Amber had always believed that hard work and talent would eventually pay off. Growing up in a modest household, she had learned the value of perseverance. While other kids spent their summers at the beach, she had been working part-time jobs, saving every penny to pursue her dream of becoming an elite wedding planner. By 25, she had built an impressive portfolio, working as a lead event coordinator at a boutique agency. Her attention to detail was impeccable, her creativity unmatched. Clients adored her, vendors respected her. She was the kind of woman who could transform a dull banquet hall into a breathtaking dreamscape with nothing but vision and resourcefulness. But none of that mattered to Mason's family. From the moment she met Mason, she had been enchanted by his charm. He was a talented wedding photographer with an easy smile, someone who understood her passion for the industry. They bonded over long nights discussing event aesthetics and color schemes, dreaming of the day they would plan their own wedding together. Yet, despite dating for 3 years, Amber always felt like an outsider in his world. Mason's parents came from money, the kind that never had to check a price tag. His mother, Judith, was polite but distant, always making subtle remarks about Amber's practical fashion choices or the fact that she worked so many late nights. His father barely acknowledged her, treating her job like a cute little hobby rather than a real career. And then there was Vanessa, Mason's younger sister. The golden child, the one who had never worked a day in her life but still managed to look down on Amber. Vanessa was everything Amber wasn't: lavish, entitled, and used to getting her way. She pranced through life like a spoiled heiress, hopping from one luxurious vacation to another, never lifting a finger to earn any of it. Vanessa made it no secret that she disapproved of Amber. She has good taste, for someone who shops on a budget. Vanessa once muttered at a family dinner, stirring her wine glass absent-mindedly. Mason had chuckled instead of defending Amber. That was the first time Amber had felt the sting of exclusion. It wouldn't be the last. When Mason proposed, she had foolishly believed things would change, that they would finally see her as an equal. She had spent months carefully designing her dream wedding, poring over every last detail, from the floral arrangements to the venue aesthetics to the custom gown she had sketched herself. She should have known. She should have realized that in their eyes, she would never be worthy. And soon, she would learn just how far they were willing to go to make sure she never got her happily ever after. Amber had spent months perfecting every detail of her wedding. Every flower arrangement, every color scheme, every elegant touch had been meticulously planned to reflect her vision, her dream. It wasn't just about having a beautiful wedding, it was about showcasing the artistry she had spent years mastering. This was supposed to be the day where all of her hard work, both in her career and in her relationship, would be celebrated. She had no idea that someone else was plotting to steal it all. It started with little things. Amber had shared her wedding plans with Mason's family during one of their monthly dinners. She had been hesitant at first, but Mason had insisted. "They need to see how incredible you are," he had reassured her, squeezing her hand. So she had laid everything out: the breathtaking venue she had booked, the elegant tablescapes she had designed, the unique seasonal menu she had curated. Vanessa had listened in silence, flipping lazily through Amber's mood board. Occasionally, she would smirk, making little comments like, "Oh, how charming." Amber had ignored the condescension. She was used to it. But then, a few weeks later, she started noticing strange coincidences. First, the florist she had booked called her with an unusual request. "I just wanted to confirm that you still want the soft ivory and blush roses with cascading orchids look." Another client with your same last name reached out, asking for the exact same floral arrangement. "I figured it might be a mix-up." Amber had been confused, but she brushed it off as an odd mistake. Then, the bakery called. "We received a request for a 5-tiered cake with gold leaf detailing and sugared florals, the same one we designed for you. Are you changing your order?" Amber felt a chill run down her spine. And then came the final blow. Scrolling through social media one evening, her heart stopped. Vanessa had just announced her engagement. The photos were stunning, lavish, cinematic shots of her and her fiancé in an extravagant setting. But it wasn't the engagement itself that made Amber's stomach churn. It was the caption. The wedding of our dreams is coming soon. Can't wait to bring our vision to life. Accompanying the post were mood board images, Amber's mood board images. Her color scheme, her venue, even her dress inspiration. Amber's hands trembled as she stared at the screen. Vanessa had stolen everything. Panic surged through her as she grabbed her phone and dialed Mason. He answered immediately, his voice casual, almost distracted. Mason, have you seen Vanessa's engagement post? Amber's voice shook with disbelief. There was a long pause. Then, a sigh. Oh, yeah, look, Amber, I was going to tell you. You knew? Her breath caught in her throat. You knew she was copying my wedding? Babe, calm down. It's not a big deal. Weddings share trends all the time. Maybe you should take it as a compliment. A compliment. Amber felt her heart shatter. Her fiancé, the man who was supposed to stand by her side, was defending Vanessa. The betrayal was suffocating. She had given everything to this family, tried so hard to earn their respect, their approval, and now, not only had they stolen her wedding, but Mason had known about it. He had let it happen. Amber had spent years building a career on creating stunning, unforgettable events. But as she stood there, phone shaking in her grip, she realized something chilling. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about power. And if they thought she was just going to sit back and let them take everything from her, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. Amber had spent years perfecting the art of elegance, precision, and creativity. Every event she touched turned into something unforgettable. She had built her career, her reputation, and now, her wedding was supposed to be the pinnacle of all that hard work. And Vanessa had stolen it. The betrayal burned deep. But if there was one thing Amber had learned in this family, it was that silence was submission. And she refused to be silent. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. They thought she was weak. They thought she would cry, scream, beg. But Amber had no intention of giving them the satisfaction. Instead, she would take back control. The first step was cutting off Mason. Amber didn't bother with a dramatic confrontation. No screaming, no tears. Just a simple, direct message. You knew, and you let it happen. You're a coward. We're done. She blocked his number before he could even reply. Men like Mason thrived on control, on keeping her attached. He didn't deserve another second of her energy. Next, she got to work. She wouldn't just take back her wedding. She would burn their perfect little plans to the ground. Amber called the vendors, her vendors. The ones Vanessa had so shamelessly copied. Hi, it's Amber. I wanted to let you know I'll be making some updates to my wedding plans. But first, has anyone else reached out claiming to be associated with me? Each call confirmed her suspicions. Vanessa had contacted every single one. The florist, the baker, the venue, even the dress designer. Amber smiled. Game on. She didn't cancel her bookings. Oh no. That would be too easy. Instead, she elevated everything. A new floral arrangement, grander, more breathtaking than before. A custom dress redesign, one that would outshine anything Vanessa could ever dream of. A venue upgrade, because money wasn't an issue when you knew how to make things work. And then, the finishing touch, she sent out her wedding invitations. A private, exclusive event. No Vanessa, no Mason, no family who had never respected her. This was her moment, and she would make sure they knew it. Then came the ultimate move. Amber sat down with the venue coordinator, one of her closest professional contacts, and reviewed the final guest list for Vanessa's stolen wedding. Would you like me to personally oversee the event? The coordinator asked. Amber smiled, leaning in. I actually have a better idea. And with that, she pulled the final string. The day before Vanessa's wedding, everything fell apart. The caterer backed out, something about a scheduling mix-up. The florist had a supply chain issue. The band suddenly had prior commitments. One by one, everything crumbled, and as Vanessa frantically called for help, Mason tried to reach Amber. Babe, I don't know what happened, but I think Vanessa's wedding is falling apart. Can we talk? She didn't reply, because while Vanessa's wedding was collapsing, Amber was getting ready to walk down the aisle, at an even grander event. With a man who actually respected her. She had won, and they had finally learned who they were messing with. Amber walked into the grand ballroom, her presence cutting through the air like a blade. The chandeliers shimmered above, casting a golden glow over the guests, who were already whispering about the disastrous last-minute changes to Vanessa's wedding. The flowers weren't the ones advertised. The food was mediocre at best. The music, well, there wasn't any. The band had never shown up. Vanessa was doing everything in her power to fake perfection, smiling through gritted teeth, holding onto Mason's arm like a lifeline. But Amber could see the panic behind her eyes. And then Amber made her move. She stepped forward, louder than necessary, just enough to make heads turn. "Oh, Vanessa," she said sweetly. "I almost didn't recognize the setup. It looks so familiar, almost like it was designed by someone else." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Vanessa's face went pale. Mason stiffened beside her. "Amber, this isn't the time." Amber cut him off with a laugh. "Oh, no, this is exactly the time." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a leather-bound wedding planning book. She held it up for everyone to see. "You see," Amber continued, flipping the pages slowly, deliberately, "this is my wedding plan. My designs. My ideas. You remember, don't you, Vanessa? Since you so kindly stole every last detail." A gasp came from somewhere in the crowd. Vanessa clenched her bouquet so hard Amber thought the stems might snap. "Amber," Vanessa hissed, her voice just barely controlled. "You're making a scene." Amber smirked. "Oh, sweetie, I'm just getting started." She turned to the crowd, addressing them all. "Did she tell you how she took every element of my wedding, down to the invitations, and made it hers? How she paraded around in a dress that was supposed to be mine?" Vanessa let out a sharp, nervous laugh. "That's ridiculous. Why would I ever do that?" Amber didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hand, and the projector behind her flickered on. A slideshow appeared, flashing images of Amber's original wedding plans. The same floral arrangements, the same table settings, the same dress sketches, side by side with the exact setup in the ballroom. The guests gasped. The comparison was undeniable. Amber turned back to Vanessa, watching her struggle to find a response. "I trusted you," Amber said, her voice steady, "and you stole everything from me. And Mason?" She turned her cold gaze to him. "You let it happen." The weight of the truth pressed onto Mason's shoulders, and he finally cracked. I didn't think it was that big of a deal." He stammered. "Vanessa just what?" Amber snapped. "Lied? Manipulated? Took credit for someone else's work?" Vanessa, red-faced and furious, turned to Mason. "You said she wouldn't find out." That was it. The final nail in the coffin. The room went silent. The betrayal, the deception, it was all out in the open now. There was no coming back from this. Amber took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, and then, with a satisfied smile, she turned on her heel and walked away. She had done what she came to do. Vanessa's dream wedding was in ruins, and Amber was finally free. Amber didn't stay to watch the aftermath unfold. She had said what needed to be said, exposed Vanessa for the fraud she was, and now it was time to let the consequences do their work. As she stepped out into the cool evening air, the distant murmur of scandalized whispers echoed from inside the ballroom. She knew what was happening even without seeing it. Vanessa's carefully curated image, the flawless bride, the perfect fiancé, the socialite with impeccable taste, was unraveling right before everyone's eyes. And Mason? Well, he wasn't escaping this unscathed either. Inside the ballroom, the whispers had turned into full-blown conversations. Guests were murmuring amongst themselves, heads shaking in disapproval. "I can't believe it, she stole everything? Did you see the side-by-side comparisons? It's identical. What kind of woman does that?" Vanessa, usually so composed, so polished, was cracking. No, she stammered, her hands trembling as she turned to Mason. "You told me she wouldn't find out. You promised." Mason ran a hand through his hair, looking around the room, realizing, too late, that every eye was on them now. Vanessa had gone too far, and now he was sinking right along with her. His groomsmen stood awkwardly to the side, whispering amongst themselves. The wedding guests, many of whom had spent a fortune to be here, were slowly realizing they had been invited to a spectacle. not a celebration. Even Vanessa's own parents looked mortified. Her mother hissed under her breath, "Vanessa, what have you done?" But Vanessa wasn't listening anymore. She was spiraling. Her voice rose in pitch. Desperate now. This was supposed to be my moment. My perfect wedding. Who cares where the ideas came from? It's mine now. Mason stiffened at that. For the first time, he saw it. The selfishness. The manipulation. The way Vanessa never actually cared about him. Only about how things looked. He had chosen Vanessa over Amber. He had allowed himself to be dragged into her schemes. And now? It was all crashing down. Mason looked around at the judgmental stares. The disappointed faces. His own best man shook his head. Man, you let this happen? That was all it took. The weight of it hit him. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about who he had chosen to be. And he hated the answer. With one last look at Vanessa, her makeup smudged. Her hands clenched in fury. Her dress the symbol of a lie, he made his decision. Mason let out a deep sigh and then, in front of everyone, he took off his wedding ring and dropped it onto the table. Gasps erupted throughout the room. Vanessa froze. What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice shaking. "I'm done." His voice was quiet but firm. Final. Mason. No. Vanessa. He shook his head. "I should have seen this sooner. But I see it now." And then, without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving Vanessa alone. The woman who had tried to steal someone else's dream was now standing in the ruins of her own. Amber didn't need to stay and watch Vanessa's world crumble. She had already won. As she walked away from the chaos, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. For so long, she had been the woman everyone overlooked. The one who worked tirelessly in silence while others took credit. The one who put her dreams on hold for people who never truly valued her. But not anymore. Amber had reclaimed her voice, her dignity, and her future. And now, it was time to make something of it. 1 year later, the sound of laughter and soft music filled the rooftop terrace of one of the most exclusive venues in the city. The skyline glittered in the background as elegantly dressed guests sipped champagne, admiring the flawless ambiance. And at the center of it all, Amber. This wasn't just any event, this was her event. After the disaster that was Vanessa's stolen wedding, word spread quickly through the industry. People wanted to know who had actually created the breathtaking designs, the perfectly curated details. Amber's name, once buried in the shadows, had become the hottest topic in high-end event planning. And tonight was the official launch of her own company, Amber Lane Events. She stood by the bar, sipping a glass of wine as she scanned the room, taking it all in. She had built this. The same people who once dismissed her, who called her ideas nice but unrealistic, were now fighting for a chance to work with her. The whispers she heard now weren't ones of doubt, but admiration. "She's the best in the business. Can you believe she started out being overlooked by her own ex? I heard she turned down a celebrity wedding because their vision wasn't high enough for her standards." Amber smiled, not out of revenge, not out of pettiness, but because she had proven, to herself, that she was always capable of this. Just then, a familiar voice pulled her out of her thoughts. "Amber." She turned around and found Mason. His suit was crisp, but there was something different about him, a weight in his eyes. "I heard about your company," he said, stuffing his hands into his pockets. I wanted to say congratulations." Amber arched an eyebrow, amused. "Didn't expect me to make it, did you?" He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Not like this. Not this big." Amber tilted her head. "And Vanessa?" Mason let out a dry laugh. "She's, not doing so great." Amber already knew. After Vanessa's wedding collapsed, so did everything else. Her reputation was ruined in their social circles. Her carefully curated friendships evaporated. She had tried to salvage what she could, but no one wanted to work with someone who had been exposed as a fraud. Amber wasn't happy about it, but she didn't feel sorry for Vanessa either. Actions had consequences. Mason cleared his throat. "I also wanted to say, I was wrong about everything." Amber took another sip of her wine. "I know." Silence stretched between them before Mason finally spoke again. "I don't expect anything from you," he admitted. I miss you. Amber smiled, but not in the way he hoped. Ah, she said, swirling the wine in her glass. See, that's the thing, Mason. He looked at her expectantly. I don't miss you. His face fell. Amber leaned in slightly, lowering her voice so only he could hear. I'm not the same woman you took for granted. She said, you chose Vanessa, and now? I choose me. Mason swallowed hard. He had lost her, not just as a girlfriend, but as someone who had ever cared about him at all. Amber stepped back, flashing him one last effortless smile. Then, with her head held high, she walked away, toward a future that was finally completely hers. This story proves that sometimes betrayal is the wake-up call we need to see who truly deserves a place in our lives. Amber had her dreams stolen, but instead of staying silent, she fought back and reclaimed everything through her talent and hard work. Vanessa and Mason's betrayal didn't break her, it made her stronger, more successful, and unstoppable. And that is the sweetest revenge, not tearing others down, but rising so high that they can never reach you. What do you think about this story? Comment 2 if you liked it and 7 if you didn't. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories.